Alright, next fly we're going to tie is one of my patterns called the Tingum Shrimp. And it's Tingum is kind of Bahamian slang for that thing I need. Something you hear down in the Bahamas all the time. This is a great little bonefish fly. It also works great for permit or redfish or anything that'll eat a shrimp. So we're going to tie this on an SC1510. It's about a size 2 equivalent, short shank, wide gap. Just going to attach the thread and just kind of work in towards the eye of the hook and get some dumbbell eyes on there. And then we're going to put, you can use bead chain or lead. This is a fairly bulky fly, and the bulkier flies need a little bit more weight to sink them effectively, so usually tie this in lead or maybe big bead chain. Just a couple of figure eights around the lead eyes to get them secure. A little bit of zap-a-gap, and then we're going to go up and over, getting progressively tighter with the thread. Up and over, down and under. And then we're going to go around those wraps and squeeze them even tighter. A couple of times. Once that zap-a-gap dries, it becomes really difficult to move those. Before that glue dries and before it gets too tight, make sure you're nice and perpendicular. Next, we're going to take some tan craft fur. Use whatever color you want to, but tan is a great flats color. Works on a light bottom, works on a darker bottom. I'm going to pull out the short stuff and then maybe stack back in the long stuff. You have a nice little bundle. And then right behind the eyes of the hook, I'm just going to butt that craft fur up and just wind it pretty quickly right down the shank all the way to the very end where it starts to bend. Next, what we're going to do is make a cool little set of shrimp eyes. And these are pretty easy to make. You just need some, small glass fly tying beads, whatever color you want. And then we're going to slip that onto some monofilament and either use some UV resin or 5-minute or 30-minute epoxy if you're doing a whole bunch of them. Get 2 beads on there. And I'll use maybe a 2-inch long piece of mono. Grab a pair of beads. String them on. Like so. I take a lighter and just singe those ends so the beads don't slip off. One bead on one side, one on the other. And I usually bend them just to keep those beads from slipping off. And then just for speed's sake, I'm going to use some UV resin because it's real quick. Just a tiny little bit of resin on there. When I'm doing a whole bunch, I usually do it with 5-minute epoxy, but either one works. Give those a quick shot with the light, cure them. And then I'm just going to cut those in half and tie one on one side, one on the other. Maybe about 1/4 inch. Sticking out 1/4 inch away from the body. Just wind that down the shank, wind back. Do the other side. Try and get them nice and even. And then maybe bend those out once you get them secured. Trim those little butts of mono. Next we're going to take a bleached grizzly rooster cape and just pick out maybe one of these side feathers that wouldn't be as useful for another fly, or a nice streamer or tarpon fly. And then we're just going to hold it by the tip, kind of flare out those fibers, and cut the very tip of the feather off. And that part is what I'm going to tie in right at the very end. Oops. Then I'm going to move my thread all the way back to where the lead eyes are. And then all that thread, I'm just going to give a coat of Zap-A-Gap. Not a ton, but definitely enough to where it soaks in. It's going to secure everything down, and then when we wrap this rooster hackle through there, this whole quill and all these fibers will be attached to the shank of the hook, and usually won't come unwound if you use Zap-A-Gap. So I'm just going to take that hackle and wrap it same way you do, you know, a woolly bugger. Just palmer it down the shank. Tie it off right behind the lead eyes. Trim off that butt end, maybe a couple more wraps to clean it up. And then I'm going to move my thread right up behind the eye of the hook. Flip the fly over. Next I'm going to take this brown barred zonker strip and maybe cut off, well, for this size of fly, maybe 1.25 inches. And then this is going to get tied in, but first we're going to impale it. I'm just kind of measuring where this part lines up with the zonker strip and where the end of the zonker strip meets the eye of the hook. Try and get it as close as I can. Remember that mark, and then just impale that bunny strip. Take the hook out, slip it the rest of the way around, put it back in. And I'm just going to take my scissors and just kind of part those fibers that are sticking up. Just kind of move them off to each side a little bit. And I'm going to take that bunny strip and pull it tight. And I'm going to hold it there and trim it even with the eye of the hook. Notice how I'm not letting go there. And then just take a loose wrap, go all the way around, get it secure, and get progressively tighter. And you're in good shape. Just a quick whip finish. And we're done. A little coat of Zap-A-Gap on that exposed thread. Maybe a tiny little bit by that hackle just to make sure. And we've got our Tingum.